Okay, so we are going to make a simple grade check program here in Scratch. And the first thing we're going to do is title our program just to make sure that we can find it easily. So I'm just going to call this grade check program, just like that. And here we go. So some of the concepts we're going to look at today, we're going to look at selection. That is basically using if, else if, and else statements in our code. And that will allow our program to do one thing or another thing based on a condition. We are also going to use relational operators. Those are things like less than or equal to, that sort of thing. We'll also be using logical operators. Those are things like the and or blocks, also called Boolean operators. And for this program, we're going to use this simplified grade scale right here. So let's jump into the program. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is grab a when flag is clicked block, which is inside of the events category. We are also going to go to sensing and grab an ask block so that we can get some input from the user. So the input is I'm going to say, please enter a grade percentage. And basically the program is going to take in a number anywhere from 0 to 100, and it will output a letter grade for what the corresponding letter grade is for that percentage. So like we usually do is we're going to save this input to a variable. So I'm going to make a variable, and again I go to the variables category, I click make a variable, and I am going to call this grade, let's just call it grade underscore per for percent. Just real quick, some languages have you or prefer that you say variables in a certain way. For this, whenever we have a variable that has two words, we're going to use an underscore to separate the words. So we'll just call this grade per. And once we take that input, we want to save that input to that variable. So I go back to sensing, I grab the answer bubble, and I place it there. Okay, so we've got that. Now here's where our selection is going to come into the program. So I'm going to go over to control, and I'm going to look for an if then else block. Now what this block is going to do is it is going to check a particular condition. And let me add that note here. So it's going to check a condition. And I could probably put that under key concepts also. I should probably do that real quick. I will add, we'll call these conditional statements. And here's what I mean by that. What I mean by that is, if this condition that's going to go in this space here, if that condition is true, the code is going to run whatever is in this slot here. Otherwise, it's going to run whatever comes down here. That is also known as selection. So it's going to do two different things based on whether a condition is true or false. So the very first thing that I like to do is I like to look for outliers. And what I mean by outliers is I mean if the user inputs something like -50 or 1000. Those are obviously not grades, and the program should not do anything based on those grades. It should say invalid, please try again. So here's where I'm going to go over to operators, and I'm going to grab an or logical operator, okay, or a Boolean operator. So what this block does is it will check one or both conditions. So if one or the other of these conditions are true, or if both of these conditions are true, then the whole condition is true, and then this block of code will run. So for this, I'm going to grab a greater than relational operator. So this is the greater than operator. And I'm going to say if my grade percentage is greater than 100. So remember, greater than does not include the 100, it's greater than 100. So it's basically 100.00001 and higher. So if the grade percentage is greater than 100, or if the grade percentage is less than but not including 0. Also, you'll notice there that I just duplicated this block. I can do that by 2-finger tapping on the block that or the bubble that I want to duplicate, and I click duplicate. So this first condition is going to check for any outliers, if it's greater than 100 or if it's less than 0. If that's the case, I'm going to go up to the look category. I'm going to grab a say block, drop it there, and I'm going to say invalid percentage. Please try again. Also, if I'm going too fast at all during this tutorial, just pause the video or rewind it and then catch up with me and then hit play again. Okay, so let's just test our code really quickly. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to just swap to the larger output window. I'm going to just test this. So if I type in 50, right, nothing's going to happen because that's outside of this check here. But if I type in 2000, it's going to say invalid percentage. Please try again. If I type -1, it's invalid. I'm just going to test by typing 0. So that's good. Nothing happens there. And if I type 100, nothing. Oops, I put in the wrong thing. If I type 100, also nothing should happen. Okay, so that's good. Let's now go ahead and check. Let's check the rest of the grades. So let's start with 100. Let's check with the A's. So I'm going to go back to control. I'm going to grab an if then else block. I'm going to drop it right there. And here's the condition that I'm going to check. So for this particular one, I'm actually going to use the AND Boolean because I am searching for a range between one number and another. You'll notice that up here, a number cannot be both greater than 100 and at the same time less than 0. So that's why I have to use the OR Boolean. For this one, a number can definitely be less than or equal to 100, but it can also be greater than or equal to 90. So that's why I'm going to use the AND Boolean. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say if the grade percentage is less than, and I want you to just watch what I'm doing here. So I'm going to say 100.1. And just, this is kind of a scratch thing, but just for this, I don't want to include 100.1. I want to include everything less than 100, but also including 100. So if it's less than 100.1, it will include 100. But if you notice up here, this is greater than 100, so it's not including 100. And then I want to do the same thing for the AND, or for the second part of the condition. So I'm going to say if grade percentage is less than, oops, I grabbed the wrong one. You grab a greater than, rather. Here we go. If the grade percentage is greater than, and for this one, I'm going to say 89.9. So that should catch the 90. Now, this won't, if I'm entering numbers that go out past 1 decimal place, it might not work correctly. But just for the sake of this program, we're just going to stick with a decimal place in the tenths place. I'm going to copy this, or I'm going to duplicate this say block, and I'm going to put it right in the if statement. And I'm going to say, you have an A. Great job. And let's just test that this catches everything. So I'm going to say 100%. You have an A. I'm going to say 90%. You have an A. And just, I'll check in the middle too. I'll say 95. You have an A. You'll also notice something really quickly. So when I took this if then else block, you'll notice that I put it into the else slot here. So the way you can read this code is you can say, well, if this condition is true, obviously I'll do this right here. Else if, so otherwise, if this is not true, I'm going to check if this statement's true. And if it is, I'm going to check this. Or if it is, I'm going to run this line of code here. So now I'm just going to duplicate this block. I'm going to drop it here. And the same thing is going to happen. I'm just going to change the values. I'm just going to change the conditions. So this one is, we're going to check a B. So I'll change my say block really quickly to a B. And I'm going to say, so for a B, if you look up here, it's between 89 and 80. So for this, I'm going to actually just change this to 90.0, or rather 90.1. Let's not do that. Let's say 90. just 90. So as long as it's less than 90, it's not including 90, and it is greater than, for this one, I will say 79.9, because we want it to include 80. So as long as it's less than 90, which would be 89.9, and it's greater than 79.9, which would be 80. So let's just test it again really quickly. I'm going to go with 89, should have a B. I'm going to go with 80, should have a B, and I'll test in the middle with 85, and I put a symbol in again, 85 again, you should have a B. Okay, so again, I'm just going to duplicate, do the same thing. And if you want to, if you kind of are getting the idea of how this works, you can go ahead and just fast forward through the video. I'm just going to keep doing this. So this is a C. And for this one, I'm just going to say, keep up the work. Just to kind of encourage them to do a little better. So again, greater than 69.9 is going to be 70. Less than 80 is going to be 79. So that's going to be a C. You'll also notice a pattern here, right? I'm 89.9, 79.9, 69.9, 100.1. This one was a little different because we're including 100, but then I've got 90, 80, and so forth. So right here, let's switch that to 70. Let's switch this to 59, 59.9. And for this one, I'm just going to take out the comment, just say you have a D. It's not terrible, but it's not great. Now, here's kind of the cool thing. So at the moment, I'm checking every single type of grade, right? I'm checking for any outliers up here. I'm checking for A's, B's, C's, and D's. So I already know if it's not an A, if it's not a B, if it's not a C, and it's not a D, and it's not any of these outlier numbers, then the only thing it can be is an F. So I'll say you have an F. Try to get that late work turned in. So let's go ahead and try this out. So I'm going to hit the green flag. Okay, so let's just test again. -5. That's invalid. But if I type 0, I should have an F. If I type 30, I should have an F. If I type 59, I should have an F. But if I type 60, I should have a D. 100 should be an A. But 100.1 should be invalid because I can't go above 100. And just one last check, I'll do a 79. That should be a C. So that is our grade check program. And you'll notice too that our code sort of slants off to the right because everything is nested inside of the else statement. But as you can see, we went over selection. We went over our if then else statements, or if, else if, and else statements. We went over our conditional statements, which this right here is an example of a conditional statement. And we also looked at our relational operators, so our greater thans, our less thans. We also looked at logical operators, or Booleans, which we used or and for this program. Otherwise, if you are all finished, make sure to hit the share button, which I'll do now. And as soon as that shares, you'll see the project saving. It will then take you to the project page, which is right here. And be sure to click the copy link and copy that link if you want to share your program. If you're in my class, again, you're going to copy that link and you're going to turn it into Schoology. Otherwise, we will see you next time.